people just aren't patient enough to get the results, and they set massively unreal expectations for themselves, and that's where a lot of people get themselves in trouble.
Welcome to the Ascend Your Success podcast. Whether you're just starting out or are a veteran looking to grow your business, you're in the right place. Join us to learn how to achieve financial freedom while working and living life on your own terms. Hear valuable insights, strategies, and interviews with successful entrepreneurs. Get ready to achieve the success you've always dreamed of. Ready? Let's go.
What's going on, guys? My name is Wyatt Reed, and this is the Ascend Your Success podcast, and today I get to interview my friend Josh Culler. Me and Josh have been in a couple of groups together, and we've met each other at speaking engagements before, and I think we've known each other for like 4 years now, so I think it's going to be a really great one. So Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started. It's a little different than the average person that's on here, right? You're in real estate, but kind of a different avenue, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, man. I much appreciate it. Looking forward to bringing some value today. So I'll make it really quick, but if you guys want to hear my full story, I have like my own podcast that Wyatt we just recorded an episode on, so you can go check that out. Long story short, back in, so I am 31 right now, and I graduated high school in 2011. By 2012, I was like working in a warehouse, and I knew one of my buddies that I had played basketball with and baseball with in high school. His dad owned a bunch of real estate rentals in our market. And I was like, dude, I really want I wasn't even interested in getting into real estate. I'm just like, I want to do something different than working in a warehouse, right? So I asked him, I was like, do you guys have anything you could do? Like, I'm pretty technically savvy and that sort of thing. Like, I know how to create some video content and stuff like that. And so they hired me, and I was doing just about everything. Like, I was doing, back then it was Craigslist postings, it was like Facebook group postings, connecting with buyers and all kinds of other stuff. Pre-looking houses. I was actually going out to visit houses. I was one of those guys putting out the bandit signs and everything at the, on the corners of street corners and stuff. And that was way back when I was 19 years old. And I was with them for about 6-7 months. And then I went to work for a competitor so Gary Harper, some people might know him who's on this podcast. He and I go way, way back. He was working with a couple other real estate investors in the Northwest Indiana market. They had built a really big wholesaling operation out here in the Midwest. And so I called him up, and I knew he was in that space. And I was like, hey, I've got like 6-7 months experience. I can do all these things. So he hired me on, and we did a little bit of virtual wholesaling out in Michigan and Ohio. We were in charge of that market for the company, and we did that for quite some time. And not saying we invented virtual wholesaling, but like nobody was doing it at that point. And Gary and I just realized we didn't like, driving, a few hours away every single week and that sort of thing. So we got that figured out, but it was a great time, learned from, one of the best in the industry, speeding it up to today. I worked in that organization as the marketing director at that point for about 6 years. And then we had all started a mastermind together. I went to run that mastermind after the organization split up in late 2017. It was a real estate mastermind. I ran that mastermind for 2 years. And all the while, I've always been in content creation. So podcast creation, video content, email marketing, graphic design, all of that stuff. And so I had been doing that for the organization because back then, marketing wasn't really marketing to motivated seller leads. It was all about building buyers lists. And you did that by delivering immense value to, the buyers and pampering them all the time. And so 2018, I decided I think it's time to go full time into my thing. And so I started building up my clientele. March 2019, I went full time into my business, which we do basically content creation management. So all on the organic side, but podcast, social media, YouTube, video content, all that stuff. So doing that still today, 5.5 years later, doing well. And we specifically work in the real estate investing industry. So still in the space.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think Don Costa was the one that kind of got us together. And I think, like I was telling you on the podcast that on your podcast that I was on, I wanted to start a podcast for probably 3 or 4 years ago. I just never pulled the trigger. I got all the equipment and everything and just never hit play,
Yeah, it happens.
I think it's so important though. You see that with a lot of investors, a lot of people doing really big things that are awesome in the real estate industry, but nobody knows about it. And I think to be really successful, everybody needs to know what you're doing. So kind of walk us through what that looks like. Should we start that as new investors? Like, should we start doing the branding thing from the very beginning? Or is that something like we reach out to you after we've done a few deals? Like, what does all that look like?
Yeah, I mean, well, reaching out to me, like, set that aside. Like, if you could do this stuff on your own, right? So the thing is, and you said it like straight out. I was literally good. You pulled the words out of my mouth. If people don't know who you are and what you do, I mean, that's branding. That's what marketing is, right? Advertising. If people don't know who you are and what you do, then you're not going to get business. Like, the more people that know, the higher potential you have of, bringing the right clientele to your doorstep, and then you convert them into, a customer. And then at that point, now it's operational. Now it's like, am I delivering value and what I'm supposed to be doing to my clients on the operation side, right? The product delivery, the service delivery, whatever it is. But in terms of marketing, like getting them through the door, then like you start that immediately. So I don't care if you've only done one deal. I don't care if you've done no deals. So the way that, let's take for instance, like I think your podcast is a little bit more like just outside of real estate, but let's just say for instance, you're a new real estate investor, you're a wholesaler. Like you maybe did one deal and you're like, man, I need to do this more. You're still working a full-time job, but you're like, I know I need to create content. I just don't know what to do. Or I just need to brand myself or market myself, advertise, whatever it is. What you're doing at this point is just advertising and marketing what you do, literally what you do. And then great way to do that is to answer questions that your potential leads will have for you about the service that you're offering. So if you're offering to wholesale, so you're going to buy it from a cash buyer, you're going to buy a house from you're going to be the cash buyer, buy a house from a motivated seller lead, then you talk about that in your marketing, in your video content, in social media about like literally answering. And if you don't know what questions are being asked, then go to ChatGPT and look that up, or go to some, Google Analytics, or go to your competitors. Like analyzing your competitors in your market is the most surefire way to know what to market, right? So replicating what they do, obviously making it your own and not just plagiarizing, but making it your own is a very easy way to break into your marketing. I think like, Wyatt, a lot of times people just like, not just even starting a podcast, like you mentioned, you got all the equipment and everything. You knew that you wanted to do it. You knew you needed to do it, but you were unsure. One of the main reasons why people don't start something even though they need to is because they're unsure of what the results will be on the back end.
Right.
And I'll just tell you this right now, like when it comes to organic content, it's very much like working out. It's very much like getting fit. Like you don't go to the gym for 2 weeks straight and you're all of a sudden like jacked and like you're, benching double what you were 2 weeks ago. That's not how it works. It takes time, consistency, doing the right fundamentals, feeding the right diet, which in my opinion is like the content creation side. It's the marketing side. It takes time and consistency, and like people just aren't ready to do that. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest thing is, and I don't like, honestly, I've been in a bunch of different like coachings. I've had a bunch of different mentors. I've been in a bunch of different groups, and I've seen things that I don't like. I've seen things that I do like, and that's how I've built my coaching. And one of the first things like you see in a lot of like, especially new investor mentorships is, get a logo, get a name, get a this, that, and I'm over here like, hey, no, get a deal first. It don't matter how you do it. Get a deal first, get some money in, and then spend some money on some branding, right? If you want to do that. But like, it don't take $20 to get a logo from like Fiverr or something. Just like what you said, go to ChatGPT and say, hey, what are the top 10 or top 20, objections or reasons why someone would sell their house, and just start making Facebook posts. You can take those questions and take a list of those like 20 questions and send it to somebody on Fiverr who'll do, for $20 will make you flyers to post on Facebook and make them really nice. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on this stuff right off the bat. You can just do simple stuff. And if you don't want to spend any money, do it on Canvas and then you do it yourself. That's easy peasy.
Yeah, I think and there's a kind of a balance to that too, right? Branding is important. It really is. Like you have to have a brand and you have to be known for that brand and that sort of thing. Like that's highly important. I think where people get hung up is they spend too much time on the perfection of it, and they, so I in a previous life I did branding as well. Like one of the first services that I offered as like service provider in a business was branding alongside with content creation. I don't do that anymore, but on the side of branding, like I would charge, $3,500 for a brand. It's pretty expensive, but like we'd go deep dive into like color theory and like designing very, very like high detail logos for people that are very specific to their business and what they do and that sort of thing. And we go through a lot of exercises and I do consulting for them but like the thing I realized was like, that's cool. But the people that were coming to me at that point were already established business owners that had a previous brand and they just want to amplify it. Right. So taking that, there's levels to it. And look at any sports organization, right? Like the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, I guarantee you that the logo that they have today was rebranded from what it was 25 or 30 years ago and definitely 50 years ago. Like you start somewhere and then you build a reputation on the name by delivering great value and great service to people. Whatever you're doing, if you're buying houses, if you're selling donuts, if you're creating content, you deliver great value to people, and then that's going to build your brand. And then at some point down the road, you can relaunch your brand when you feel like you have the ability, the time, the money, the resources to invest in that fresh brand. And at that point, that's cool. But I think people just get hung up on the perfection of it and just they want it to be exactly like they want it to be super, super good, and then they wait 6 months for the brand to launch before they do any deals or before they sell a donut. Like, do the action, and then like the branding will come as you do it, right?
Yeah, I think people get they overcomplicate it, and they focus in on that for too long, and like you said, and while they're focused on that, they're not doing deals, right? And they think that they're just stuck with what they said. Honestly, like I had that feeling when I first got started too. I'm stuck with what I say I am, who I say I am, what I do, right? But since then, I've probably rebranded my real estate company 2 or 3 times. I've rebranded my coaching company 2 or 3 times. And it happens, especially like when you're involved in so many different mentorships. Like I remember I started with Tom Kroll not long ago, about a year and a half ago, and he was like, I hate your name. I hate the logo. It confuses me. Change it. And I'm like, man, this is what I've had for so long. And, I was kind of like, I don't know about that. But then we changed it up, and lo and behold, he was right? It was confusing. So
Yeah. Was that the logo that I commented on you about? Yeah, on my podcast. I was like, dude, that's pretty sick. See, it works, right?
It was that was what we changed it to. Yeah, he was like, get an animal. I don't care what it is. Just don't do a rhino, and everybody does a rhino, so do something different. And so we did, and I love it, man. He's like, now get a bunch of T-shirts with a buffalo on it and the website on the back. I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah, there you go. But you started somewhere, right? And that's the truth to everything. Like if you're starting a business, you don't start with 25 employees and 100 deals that you're doing a month. Like you start with one deal by yourself for a very long period of time, and then maybe 6 to 12 months down the road, when you're starting to ramp it up, you hire a TC or a EA. At that point, okay, I'm hiring somebody that's going to help me with doing my daily tasks and getting deals locked in and that sort of thing. And then maybe you're hiring some, service providers to send direct mail pieces for you or to manage your SEO and PPC campaigns. So it's like it's an evolution, and it's the same thing. It's the same practice as literally anything else. But and again, I go back to like the gym. The gym example is like you don't just like you've never been to the gym before and you hop into the gym and you start curling 50-pound dumbbells. Like it's just not how it works. You got to start with the 15s, and then you go up to the 20s after like 3 or 4 months of progression overload and that sort of thing. Like people just aren't patient enough to get the results, and they set massively unreal expectations for themselves, and that's where a lot of people get themselves in trouble. So
100%. So we kind of talked about how to get started, like how the different tasks that you can do to not spend money, to spend a little bit of money. What about now? Let's kind of move into more advanced, like whenever they've gotten a couple of deals, whenever they've started doing the content and stuff like that. How do you now take your business and amplify what they're doing to do even more? What does it look like to work with you?
Yeah, good question. I appreciate that. I think so. First of all, I'll step back and say like again, we were talking about progression and taking one step at a time, where a lot of people want to just take leaps and bounds, which theoretically sounds great and highly aggressive, but that's going to scale yourself out of the business. Right. And you're going to eat up all kinds of costs that you weren't ready for and that sort of thing, or just not even flat out be able to keep up with it. So in my world, there's typically 3 stages of progression. And this is something I've learned over the past few years that every business, every service has their kind of like niche that they kind of sit in no matter what they're doing. So for me, like the 3 stages, number 1 is like in content creation is you're doing it yourself. So you're somebody that you started, a podcast and you don't know what it's going to do, but you wanted to start it and you just took the action. Great job. That's awesome. You're producing it yourself. You're quality checking yourself. You're writing the copy for yourself, titling, and then you publish it yourself, right? So you do all that light work and just get it out. Get it out every single week, and you do that for, 50 to 100 episodes or whatever that is. That's the first stage, is you're doing everything yourself. Same thing for social media. If you're like editing, you're shooting the videos and then you're editing the content on your phone with CapCut or whatever it is, like you're doing all that and then you post it yourself. There's advantages to that. Obviously, it doesn't cost you anything but your time. Then the other side of it is, but you're probably shortcutting stuff, so you're not doing all the fundamentals correctly. You forgot to post on social media today, even though you're supposed to do 1 video a day or 2 videos a day, but you forgot because you got busy because you were closing a deal. There's that kind of stuff, right? There's always a give and take. The next stage would be where you hire and I think this is where a lot of people will skip this stage and go straight to the 3rd stage, which to me is okay for some people, but it's not highly advised. The 2nd stage is typically an outside service provider. So you're hiring somebody such as myself where we do all the management for you. So I might look at Wyatt and say, all right, Wyatt, if we're managing your podcast, then I need you to record, if your podcast goes out once a week, then I need you to record at least, up to a month out every single, at all times. Like you need to have at least 4 episodes in the pipeline, in the can, ready for my team to produce so we have ample time to be able to manage everything. Wyatt is only responsible for the recording of the podcast and then uploading it for us, and that's it. There's nothing else. My team's fully managing it, taking it from phase like the editing, the creation of the show notes and the descriptions, the titling, like all the thumbnails, all that stuff, and then we publish it for them. That's typically your 2nd stage of content creation, where you outsource that. You have a little bit of money to spend, you're sick of wasting your time on it, and you know it needs to be done, so you're just getting it out, it's going, that sort of thing, and it's growing. The 3rd stage, which is where I said a lot of people skip from 1 to 3, and some people do this in different like capacities, but the 3rd stage is obviously in-house. So now you have somebody that is an employee of yours that manages does everything that stage 2 does, but it's just they're under your payroll. However, obviously the give and take is you're now managing that person. If you hire a service provider, there's a little bit of management with service providers, but typically, like, especially people that work with me, they can tell you that, like, I really do come in as that manager for my team on behalf of the client, right? So they're not talking to my video editors, they're not talking to my social media managers or anything like that. But the stage 3, a lot of people go from 1 to 3, hire a virtual assistant to manage everything for them. Maybe that virtual assistant only works like 5 to 10 hours a week, something like that. That's totally fine, but then where the danger comes in is typically that person that they brought in-house. This isn't for everybody, but this is most people that I've seen this case of. They'll bring that person in-house, and then that person will do everything they're supposed to, but they're not really executing fundamentals correctly. They're an expert in editing video, but they're not an expert in social media management. They're not an expert in copywriting and that sort of thing. So they're an expert in a craft specifically, but they don't know the entirety of how it works, right? But then if you have like a large organization and you have a full-time videographer, a full-time social media manager, a full-time content creator, that sort of thing, that's where, you have specialities and they can kind of fall into that. That's where you see a lot of bigger organizations where they'll have 4 or 5 marketing people on their team full-time. That's kind of where that comes in, right? And obviously, like at that stage, even people will get consultants and that sort of thing still. But there's kind of an evolution to it, and that's typically the way it goes. And a lot of people I'll have, Wyatt, that come to work with me went from stage 1 to 3, and then they found that they had to do all the management and all the guiding and dictating and leading, where they thought they could just hand it off to this employee that they would pay 15 or 20 bucks an hour to, but they had to establish everything for them because they didn't know social media, they don't know podcast growth or whatever. So then they came back down to me and like, all right, I'm ready to like take this thing seriously. What do we do?
Right.
So,
yeah, I agree. I think that's so important because I think whenever we were doing our interview on your podcast, I was telling you, like, we were talking about marketing, and I am at this point in my walk or my business where I want everything done for you. I don't want to have to manage a bunch of people. We've been there, we've done that, we've scaled back. Even my real estate marketing is completely done for you. So I think it's very important, because if I come to Josh and I say, hey, I want you to do all this for me, I mean, we're going to flip a light switch after a couple of conversations, and it's going to go, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I hire somebody, even if it's not a VA, even if it's somebody that comes in and works in my office, I've still got to teach them what I like, what I don't like. Like, I've got to teach them how to do exactly the way that I want it to be, right? And you guys may not do it exactly the way I want it to be done, but it's done at a much more, I believe, at a much more professional, viewpoint.
Yeah, like a lot of people come to me, like especially on the social media management side, they'll be like, I want to do 2 videos a day on social media, which is cool. They have somebody in-house that's a videographer, but they're not an expert in editing video contextually for social media, and then especially managing it. So then the videographer will like do all the video, like make it look good and that sort of thing. They might be able to edit it, but then they're like not consistent with the posting. So then they'll do 2 postings a day, and then they'll keep track on a scorecard every week on their level 10 meetings, and do that for 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden the videographer will start to fizzle out because they're not a social media manager. So they're kind of getting burned out of that position because that's not what they're an expert in, and they don't enjoy it. They enjoy doing the video portion of it. So then the next answer is like, well, they'll bring in a social media manager, but even then, like, you don't have processes and systems built out. So people come to me at that point like, we just want consistently 2 videos a day going out. Can you just do that?
Right.
Yes, we can do that because we have the proper systems and processes built out. And that's where like the execution of the service comes in, is like that's highly important too. A lot of people will, once they get in-house, they think that just the craft, the people that are experts in that seat will be able to execute everything down to the T, but they don't have their systems and processes. They have the systems and processes built out for everything else, for lead management, for follow-up, for how books are being processed or transaction coordinating, but they don't have it for the marketing side. They don't have it for social media management or podcast management. And then it falls apart, doesn't stay consistent, which we all know consistency is one of the most important factors when it comes to this stuff.
100%. Yeah, I know I miss postings, and I've gotten to the point to where I feel like crap when I miss a posting and beating myself up over it, whereas back then I'm like, I'd be all right. But now I know how important it is, so that's very important. So We're coming up close to time. If you could go back now from what you know now and start all this over, or give yourself advice from the very, very beginning, like a new investor coming in, what kind of advice would you give these guys as far as doing all of this, knowing what you know now?
I think, man, so you asked it in a little bit of different manner than most people would, because most people are like, if you went back to when you were like 18 years old, what would you tell your 18-year-old self? So you asked it a little bit differently, because my typical answer for that would be, I would just say, keep going the way you're going, because I'm a Christian, and I believe God's like leading me down the right paths that he's supposed to, as long as I take the proper actions. But that's kind of where my answer will be skewed to your question, is just taking the consistent action is the most important part of getting anywhere that you want to go. And I think like a big truth in this, especially for the younger demographic, is, learning how to fail and to fall on your face, but get back up. Because no matter who you're watching on social media, no matter what podcast you're listening to, YouTube channel, whatever book you're reading, I 100% guarantee you that person has failed far more than they have succeeded. And that is the truth in the way that this business world works, or just anything really, like any career that you go into. So taking the action, being okay with failing, and learning from those failures is obviously important. You don't want to become psychotic and just like, keep failing on the same thing over and over and over again. We don't want that. That's the definition of insanity. But just taking the right actions, right? Like that's really important, and continue to learn and grow. I will tell you this, there was a phase roughly about a year ago where I stopped growing. I stopped being consistent. I kind of felt like my business was fine where it was, and it started to like slowly fall apart. And then like as soon as I got back in to start taking the actions, it continued to fall apart. Because it's a delayed reaction, right? So then it started picking back up because I was staying consistent with my actions and that sort of thing. But I got too comfortable. Lesson learned, like continue to do the actions, continue to do what you're supposed to do for your organization, for your business. And that's the advice I would give you. So if you're 18, if you're 25, if you're 45, and you're looking to get into the business world or do anything, like with this, just take action. That's really all it is.
Yeah, you gotta do the things that 99% of other people won't do, right? So, dude, how can people get a hold of you? How can they follow you? Like, tell us that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. So I have 2 podcasts. Number one is the REI Marketing Weekly. So if you're a real estate investor in any way, shape, or form, all we talk about is marketing for real estate investors. So how to get deals, how to network, how to brand yourself, lead generation, all of that stuff. Again, Wyatt was on that podcast. So I think by the time this podcast episode goes out, the episode with Wyatt on my podcast will have gone out. So make sure you do go check that out. And if it hasn't gone out, then subscribe, because then you'll get notified when his episode does go out.
Right.
That's a good episode, a good podcast. We do that once a week, and every once in a while I'll pepper in a solo episode myself, so you might get a second one on a weekly basis. The other podcast that I have is called the Impact Network, and that's very kind of open to not just business owners. I built it specifically outside of the business space. I do have business owners on there, but it's all about highlighting people that I have personal relationships with that I believe are impacting others for good. That one is shot live in a studio, and really, really well, high production value and that sort of thing. So that's a lot of fun. And check that out, the Impact Network. On social, you can hit me on Instagram or Facebook. I am verified on both platforms. So I'm the only Josh Culler that's verified. So that's how you know it's going to be me. Send me a direct message if you want to connect, and just say Wyatt sent you, and we'll connect and answer any questions that you guys have for me.
Heck yeah, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you so much for being on here. Thank you for being such a go-giver, man. And like I said, we've known each other for 4 years, and I've consistently seen you working with people that I know that I love and respect. And so that speaks words, man. The people that you're around are good people. So
yeah.
Thank you so much for being a part of it, man. Hey, guys, I just want to challenge you, if you heard anything on here that you liked, that you related with, and I want to challenge you to do exactly what Josh said. Take massive imperfect action, right? So if you're interested in learning anything at all about real estate, then go to ascendyoursuccess.com, fill out that application. I look through them personally, and I will call you personally, and we'll have a conversation about it. So whether you're in or you're out, I'll see you next time.